Have you ever felt like there's something more to life than what you're currently doing?
Do you see the world differently than everyone around you?
Do you ever dream of achieving big things but feel stuck? We're Tiffany and Sid, and we are the Cycle Breakers.
Not long ago, no one believed in us.
The people closest to me said I'd make a great receptionist.
And mine completely abandoned me and left my life.
We started our journey 5 years ago in a basement.
Now, we live our dream life in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. But how did we get here?
We saw a life that was much better than the one we were living.
And broke through the blocks that hold most people back.
Like self-sabotage, crippling self-doubt, and the fear of rejection. But we knew we were made for more, so we bet on ourselves to make the life that we wanted.
And jumped into a life dedicated to breaking old cycles and patterns.
And now we live on 97 acres in the Smoky Mountains. We travel the world speaking on stages, and we help a small army of people break their cycles as well.
We're the Cycle Breakers, and we break through blocks that are holding most people back so we can go live our dream life.
Welcome to the Cycle Breakers Show.
Hey, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Cycle Breakers Show. I'm one of the original Cycle Breakers, Sid Clevinger. I'm super excited about our guest today. Not only does he come from across the pond, Adil has been one of my really good friends, really through a lot of my journey over the past 6 years. When I had my initial problems and I was realizing that I was losing my shit, Adil was one of the first people that I reached out to and one of the first people that I was able to relate to. Adil is one of the best copywriters that I've ever met. He's one of the best creatives that I've ever met, and he's across the pond. And I'm super excited to bring someone across the pond back over here to the United States and have him be on the Cycle Breakers Show. So Adil, thanks so much, man. We're super excited to have you.
Hey, thanks, man. Thanks for having me, Sid. Sid, as soon as I saw that you were actually doing this, I was like, hey, man, I got to get on this because I love
Dude,
talking
like,
to you.
I'm so happy you're here. Like, I'm smiling from ear to ear. I could talk to you for hours, but I
What
really
you guys
want to
don't know,
Yeah.
what I was going to say, what the viewers don't know is we spent like a good 30 minutes before the show just having a catch up of ridiculous, and we're probably going to do that later on as well.
We've
But, like,
already
this
scheduled
is
a
what
time for next week.
we just love talking. So, like, this
Yeah.
is as soon as the
Two
opportunity came,
creatives,
like,
put two creatives on a
hell yeah.
video and it's game over.
100%.
So what are, for the people that might not know who you are, I know a lot of people do. Okay. You got a lot of eyeballs on you and I respect you and I love you for that. But maybe for somebody who doesn't know who you are, kind of tell them, we were talking about this before we, pushed record, but tell them kind of like the life that you've created. You're across the pond, maybe it's a little bit different, but what is the life that you once, like, this is what I want to do in my head and now have been able to create and are kind of living right now in a day-to-day kind of fashion.
All right, cool. So I'll give you guys like a snapshot of what my life is at this exact moment and where it's going, because the two are very, very interesting because they're actually quite related. But right now, where my life is I no longer take on clients unless I absolutely want to. I get charged an extortionate amount of money, which a lot of people think is extortionate, but the reality is when you make back 10 times the amount you get paid, life is good. So I get paid for my work. I get paid to consult most of the time. I now teach and help and register and basically help other copywriters do their thing and make their shit better than it is. And I've got a new podcast coming out, which I'm really looking forward to, which is actually even better. So, like, I'm going back to my roots as a podcaster, which is wonderful. My life's pretty good. I work 4 days a week, which are optional. I take a whole day off whenever I want. I take weekends off to relax and enjoy myself. And truthfully, I'm now just starting to get back into my hobbies of traveling and working out and training again, because like life's always an interesting thing. Where my life is going though, right now I'm in a 10-week sprint, which I like to have every so often. I've got a lot of work to get done in a short period of time, but that's all managed because everything that I'm working towards that I'm doing over the next 10 weeks is all due to process and actually down to years of expertise. Essentially, it's doing all the hard work in 10 weeks so I can take the rest of the year off, essentially. Like, the rest of 2024 could literally be, I don't have to work another day, except for writing a couple of emails and shit talking on Facebook. That's literally all I get to do, which is fun. So, and talk to friends, because podcasts and catch-ups are a huge part for me. So that's where my life is today. And I'm very happy with where I'm at. Do I wish other things were better because, like my health, like, do I feel like I could lift weights as much as I used to? Yes, but injuries are healing. So I'm very grateful for all those things and looking forward to getting back onto, like, life being however I want it to be.
It's interesting.
Mostly that.
Yeah. It's interesting, man. You talked about the 4-day work week. I think so many entrepreneurs that initially get into entrepreneurship, it's because they want that freedom. You live it,
Oh,
you know.
we there was a time when we met where I used to only work because I used to do copywriting projects for clients and it would take me 3 months to get them done. By the way, a good copywriter, it shouldn't take about a month. A good copywriter, it takes about 2 or 3 months to get things done because there's so much research and understanding every area of your goddamn company, not just the words that go on to advertising. There's so much more that needs to go on. But anyway, when I was doing that, as you can imagine, a 3 month period of delivering great copy that basically generated hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, I used to just work maybe 2 days a week. Like my whole thing at that point was so my work week used to look like this. I'd spend Monday doing this for client work. Let's say I took on 3 clients over a 90-day period. So 3 clients. Monday would be client one, Tuesday would be client two, Wednesday would be client three, then Thursday through Sunday I'd be off. I wouldn't be doing anything. Or I'd mix it up where I'm like, I don't want to work today. I'll move that to Thursday. I'll move that to Friday. I'll do this on Sunday. I'll just push this off by a week because I know I can catch up with it. And again, 3 months at the speed that I got to with what I knew I could do, I can get most of the client pieces done inside a 2 week period after I collect all the data I needed. So yeah, that was the lifestyle I wanted to live, and that's the lifestyle I lived for a very long time. And now, I still do live that
Now
lifestyle,
you're
but
going to be
slightly
on
different.
podcasts and talk to Southern bumpkins like me.
Oh,
Uh,
bumpkins, I wouldn't use that word. Southerners, hells yeah.
um, but it's interesting, and I want to make sure, we're going to bring up something on this show today
Sure.
that I think is very, very important. And obviously, like you hear with a lot of our interviews, we start with where they're at because, this is what they're living on every day. But then I really want to let's pull back the curtain a little bit. So initially, me and Adil, I think we met in 2017,
Yeah,
and
around
then
that time.
it wasn't until about 2018, or it was 2019 when I started recognizing that I had issues, and I started reaching out to you as, I don't want to talk to you as a business colleague. I want to talk to you as a friend. I need a friend.
You and I had always been close anyway.
We
Like
had
we
always
knew
been
each other.
close.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
But like this is like this is where we stepped out of it. Yeah.
this is the first time I was like, okay, like I'm telling you, I'm reaching out to you if I need a friend.
Yeah.
And
And I'm glad you did.
I'm really glad I did too, man. You have no idea how much you helped. But when we reached out, you said something to me, and I was blown away by that because I always saw a deal on the, not that you were hiding it, but I always saw
No.
a deal as this very professional, very clean cut professional, even though you had really awesome, long, beautiful hair back then.
Man, dude,
Um,
everyone regrow my hair. Like for the people that know, like you can Google photos of down to my shoulders at that point as well.
I loved it. It was so luscious too,
Uh,
man. You took good care of it. But
Thank you.
I reached out to you, and you mentioned something to me, and you said, I want you to know something that I've been told that I have bipolar. And
Yeah.
something that I recently found out is that it wasn't bipolar, and I'll let you explain kind of what happened, but I'm interested to know, like, was where was it for you? Maybe when it came to this, like, where was it for you when you were just like, I'm not going to accept that? Because I think a lot of people look at people with mental illnesses, quote unquote, like that, and they'll say they
And
can
it's an end game.
only, or they can't, they can never. So it's they
Yeah.
can only, or they can't never. At
Yeah.
that English, I don't know. But
I agree.
I'm curious to know, like, when that happened to you, what were kind of the thoughts that were going through your mind? And then, like, how did you maneuver really to get over someone telling you that you could or you couldn't do something, at that part of your life?
Okay, so this kind of stems back really early on in my life. So I'm lucky that my parents very much don't believe in the whole you can't do something. They're like, if you want to do something, you go do it. Like they were always that kind of mindset that they had. Being having brown kids for like having brown parents from like an African Asian household, ass whoopings are easy to come by. So you gotta learn how to walk your line so you don't catch one. And doing good at school was usually it. I wasn't very good at school. I was a little bit more autistic, but I got on by. But my teachers used to tell my parents that, hey, your kid needs to speed up. Hey, your kid's really smart when he speaks, but he's really not smart when it comes down to his writing, which is hilarious that I wrote for a living for such a long time in my life. Um, but all of that kind of built up a thick skin because for a really long time, I used to be driven by the negative motivator, which is tell me I can't do something and watch me do the thing. Like, just watch me. You want to tell me I can't do this? Watch me. You say that this goal is whatever it is, watch me. And of course, this for a long time when I was 16, again, just to kind of go through this used to come up, and then I as you mentioned, I thought it was bipolar because I started to have suicidal thoughts and suicidal tendencies. There was a couple of attempts, there was quite a few attempts, there were several attempts on myself up until I was 18. And in that time period, when I wasn't trying to kill myself, I built up a thick skin of I can just do this. Like, that life has proven that I can do anything. I will keep rising to the challenge. Jokingly, back then we had like screen names for MSN. We had like names for like just stupid ass names that you just basically make up as a nickname. One of the ones that I chose was the word Phoenix, and I was like, I love the word Phoenix because Phoenixes die and they reborn. They're always reborn stronger. And I'm like, that's what I am. I die and I'll come back stronger. It doesn't matter. I'll always come back stronger. So fast forward to the time, like I'm 31, 32 years old. So this is only a couple of years ago, 2021. I find out that I have ADHD because like everyone's telling me, Adil, you have ADHD. I was like, no, I don't. Or they're like, you're autistic. I'm like, no, I'm not. Even like my friend who has two autistic kids looked at me and went, boy, you are autistic. And I was like, no, I'm not. Just like hiding in this dream world for a really long time. And I'll explain why this is important. So when I actually sit down to do my ADHD assessment, you got ADHD. Cool. 3 months later, do a private assessment. You got autism, but you're really well balanced between your ADHD and your autism because you really can't tell that you're autistic and you can't tell that you have ADHD. But you know, when you peel back the layers, you can see it all. I was like, oh shit. Now imagine spending your entire life believing you're heading north, and everything on the map is telling you should see this on your right, you should see this on your left, keep going straight, this is everything for that. And every time you look at from the goddamn map, every time you look left, every time you look right, every time you look at the scenery of what you're supposed to see, it looks nothing like the description of what you were told you'll be seeing. That would drive you insane. Do that long enough, it'll drive you to a point where you're just wondering whether or not you know what reality is, hence the multiple times of trying to kill yourself, or having, in my case, which was imposter syndrome, believing that I wasn't a good enough copywriter, believing that I wasn't good enough to put my voice out there, believing that I was just another punk. Like, that was the insanity, because I'd see people that I train go through the fucking stratosphere, and then there's me just left behind. I'm like, what did I do wrong? And all that time, I kept believing I was following the right map. When I got the autism ADHD diagnosis, it was like someone flipped the map upside down and went, hey, dummy, you've been walking south this entire time, not going north. You need to turn this around and go the way you need to go. And so that's what I did. So I started doing those little things again and started moving towards that. And like I said, the reality was, for a long time, being told I couldn't do something drove me to do it better than everyone else. So being told I have ADHD, autism, when I looked into it for what it was, the reality of what it is, they are superpowers. Your brain is basically it's a finely tuned inherited machine, and more importantly, it's, again, goes to the cycle breakers. It is a trauma-based system, meaning your brain is actually programmed, like an autistic person's brain or an ADHD person's brain is naturally already set with that hardware that goes, hey, we need to run the autistic ADHD program because this motherfucker needs to be protected because it's born from trauma. But if it's brought up in a space of loving whatever it is, it can be actually used as a superpower. There has to be some level of trauma for the superpower to exist. If you don't believe me, go watch Deadpool, X-Men, or anything like that, where you just basically see Deadpool getting his ass whooped. And they go, we got to put you under a lot of stress for you to activate this mutant gene of yours. It's exactly what happens to your brain. So when you see it as a superpower and not a hindrance, yes, it does become painfully painful when you have to do, like, you just want to stop. You wish that your life was normal, that you wish that you didn't have to go through processes where you have a mountain of things to do and your brain can't even get one thing done because it's wondering why the color yellow is called the color yellow, which, by the way, yes, may or may not have been a 20-minute rabbit hole on my phone, and then me ending up on Reddit wondering why I was on Reddit. That has happened, by the way.
Yeah.
So all that comes down to say, I just learned to accept it. I broke the rules because I accepted what I was doing, and I realized where I was in my life. I wasn't working for someone I didn't want to work for, so that's a gratitude. I literally spent all my teen years, all my 20s, literally building something so I could actually walk away and still work the hours I wanted. And I gathered all the experience. I have more experience than people like the 10, 20 years older than me because I've run more campaigns than them.
Yeah.
And the beauty, and this is the real beauty, what I was going to say is the third thing, is quite simply, I realized because I can harness my superpowers in such a way and understanding how to harness them sets me apart. By understanding that simple process of whatever it is, whether you're autistic, ADHD, OCD, bipolar, where you have a body, what was it, BPD, which is basically I can't remember what that is. I can't remember the actual thing, but it's basically a form of dysmorphia.
You talk about it.
Disassociation, yeah. Borderline personality, but borderline
Borderline
personality
personality
autism.
disorder. That.
Yeah, that's the one. Thank you. We got there in the end.
We got
Whatever these are, I'm not saying they don't exist, but rather look at the superpower and the root. Because if you can figure out the root, you can actually almost help yourself not eliminate it, because these are like deep traumas in the brain. So of course it's not going to recover overnight, but you can actually start doing the work to start rewriting the neuroplasticity and the pathways that are there. And then of course, if you change the belief around it, it now starts to serve you.
Isn't
For
it?
instance,
Yeah. Isn't it interesting though, man? Like you mentioned a couple of things there where you said the root. I'm going to come back to that.
yeah,
I think that's huge. Two, you mentioned something about how you could use your how when you were told autistic and ADHD, and you took that and you reframed that into
yeah,
yours, it's a superpower. Did you
yeah.
believe that there was not only a lot of people, but just a lot of organizations, the reality that was in front of you of TV and everything that was in your ears and in your eyes? Do you think that there were people trying to program you to think differently?
Like that it would be a hindrance.
Yeah, like the complete
Oh,
opposite.
dude, I had friends. I had really good friends. I have a really good friend. He's a mindset guy. I love him to pieces. I'm not gonna name him because this makes him sound a little bit like an asshole, but he's not. He's actually a very sweet guy. What he said to me, and he meant it from love. His whole thing was, if you keep saying that you have ADHD and autism, you're using it as a hindrance for you to actually succeed, is what his words to me were. And I can see where he was coming from.
Yeah.
As in, like, why would, because for him in his world, again, he was programmed to believe it's a negative.
Mhm.
So I've had people say that from the outside, but again, it comes back down to that belief. Now, don't get me wrong, there is levels of autism where it's very, very severe, where it is a hindrance. You can't do anything. There's a level of social anxiety, which means you can't walk out the house. There are levels to these things. I'm lucky that I found like a balance level for my stuff, and I just happen to meet a lot of other people that happen to have this balanced out. But what I was going to say, and this is an illustration of how you can find your superpowers outside of, let's just say someone that has a personality disorder that basically allows them to split into a different personality where they're unaware. Guess what that means? That means that your brain already has figured out how to give you a split personality or an alter ego. You can tap into that and create another alter ego for yourself. Like that's just an idea that you can look at if you want to look at it from that perspective.
Mhm.
Because your brain's already followed that pathway, so it knows how to replicate. So could definitely do something along those lines. If you so like, I'm just giving you an idea of how you can reframe something that is seen as a negative into a positive. Doesn't mean it has to work that way. It's just an idea.
Isn't
Um,
reframing like the biggest? It's such a huge part of all of this because I think
oh,
like you
massively.
have like I was told I had ADHD for a long time. Whether I do or I don't, part of me thinks because I'm not on medicine anymore, and
Yeah,
I feel
good.
better. And I'm not a doctor, but I'm just being honest. I feel better now because I have emotions and feelings, and I'm not numbed out than I ever did when I was on medicine because the medicine numbed me out.
Yeah,
So you talked a lot about the root too, and I really kind of want to put a pin on this because my heart's saying when you said that.
yeah,
Here's why. Because I think so many people that are wanting to break the cycle of whatever it is, whether it's generational trauma, whether it's anxiety, whether it whatever, like we could sit here and name 100 blocks.
yeah,
But when they look at it, they're like, I'm going to go to YouTube and I'm going to look up a meditation that I can do. I'm going to go and study these affirmations that I can stare at myself in front of the mirror and tell myself lies that I don't believe myself.
yeah,
I can do all of this stuff that's surface level. It's one level deep, but they're never willing to actually look at themselves and say, this is where I screwed up. And like like Tiffany was a huge part of my journey. Trauma hypnosis was a huge part of my journey. Yes. But before I was able to allow those tools to work for me, I had to be able to look at myself in the mirror and say, I fucked up.
Yeah.
And until I was able to do that, did actual change really happen? So you talked a lot about the root. What's the story about you realizing like, okay, like I have to go to the root of this before I'm going to make change? And like, what really happened for you when you were able to start digging up your root and really start changing the identity of who Adil is?
Okay, so this is gonna sound really weird because it's kind of hard to answer that. I'll explain why. Because on one hand, I want to say that, hey, I went through this process, but for me, I don't really believe I think I did. I've sat down with myself over the decades, just gone, who am I? Why am I here? What do I want to do? Who am I below beyond everything I've done? And I think about this very frequently, by the way. So it's a constant thought in my head. As you can probably guess, this is one of the downsides of my autism is you become extremely self-aware of certain things and then you just see it for what it is.
Mhm.
So for the longest time in my life, I've gone through different elements of this. So I've always like constantly questioned who I am, what I'm doing, are my intentions good, where was I right, where was I wrong, take responsibility for everything, don't leave others, just like so much stuff. Because self-development is a lifelong journey for me. And doing so, I don't really know when I found that route, but I do know I might have never found it. I might have not even done it by this point. I don't really know. All I can say is that because I've done so much self-study and self-focus, and I continually do so, that's the key thing here. It's not stopped. It's constantly going. But it's not beating myself over the head with it. It's kind of very much like a constant internal look to how to improve life. Like it's smaller optimizations to go, I had a good day today. How do I make today feel good for tomorrow? Like, how do I keep this as a consistency rather than
So momentum,
inconsistency?
is that kind of what you're talking
Exactly.
about there?
Well,
Momentum?
momentum and continual, because like once you have momentum, it's not perpetual motion. It needs to be continually moved forward. Because inertia happens in everything in the universe. Um, if it's not maintained or kept up. So what I'm getting at here is that when I started doing a lot of this work, when I got to the root of the ADHD, the autism, what's in my way, what am I doing, why am I not happy, what's forcing me to not feel successful, I was in a place where I was quite dark. Like I was avoiding my problems. I wasn't getting through with work. I was literally avoiding doing work. I was trying to find the easiest way to survive. It got to a point, and Sid, you've known me for a while now. I rarely feel sad and negative, but it really got to a point where I only could work 2, 3 hours a day. Like that's the only amount of time I could stomach being online was I'd work for 3 hours doing some consulting for like the membership, and of course, the coaching company I was like co-founded. I'd do that and I'd get offline and I'd be depressed for most of the day.
Did
Like
you
the
ever
depression would
feel,
kick my ass.
did your, this happened to me. I'm curious what happened to you. I used to look at social media earlier parts of 2023 when I was going through like my
Yeah.
family stuff. And I'd look at it and there would be days where it would repel so hard. My anxiety would go from fine to through the roof to the point where I thought I was
Yeah.
about to have a heart attack because I was
Yeah.
looking at my phone screen. Did that ever happen to you?
Yeah. Messages, conversations with people, even friends that I want to speak to and stuff on a normal day, I'd just be like, oh God, I can't even do this. No.
What
Just I had
helped
to
you
like
get
hide it.
past it? Like, how'd you get, because now I know you do it because you answered my message when I reached
Oh
out to you.
yeah,
You're doing this right now.
100%. So the thing is, I've always had good habits with keeping in touch with people because I learned very early on that the moment I go silent and just cut everyone out and don't talk to them, whatever it is, people get worried about me. And again, I have a friend of mine who's going through this right now, and I'm the only person that they keep in touch with. So all the friends message me to talk to them. So I realized how much of a burden that possesses on other people. And my friend doesn't know, like, I don't consider it a burden because they're a friend. They would do the same for me. But like, even from their eyes, I can see what they feel because we've had conversations about it. But like, for me, what helped me get out of that, because that's the key thing. Like, how did I get out of that? Well, quite simply, this is what I was getting at. I got down to the root cause of it. I looked at my life and said, why am I not happy? What's going on? What's happening? I wasn't training, which again, injuries have forced me not to train for the last little while. But like at the time, I wasn't training, still emotionally going through stuff, hadn't taken enough time, was trying to fulfill stuff, trying to survive. Because again, I was living in London at the time. So like it was really expensive at the time. Um,
It's one of the most
I was
expensive
like,
places, isn't it?
one of the most expensive cities in the world. I was spending 10 grand a month basically just to survive there. Like that's the level I was at. And I realized because I spoke to a friend and he said to me, why don't you leave? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, why don't you move back home with your mom for a little while? Because she's alone. It's like, why don't you move back to your childhood home, recover, and come back out and see what happens? I was like, maybe. And then I decided to move to Zanzibar. So I moved back to Africa. I moved to Africa for like 6 months. While I was there, I had a lot of adventures. I met a lot of good people, started to like get some parts of my life back in order, trying to really understand what I could do. And because the cost of living back in Tanzania was so cheap, and I had so much family there, I literally closed one big deal, fulfilled on it, and that covered me for 6 months while I was out there. So I was like,
Took
this was good.
stress. That took away
Yeah,
stress, which
that took away the stress, which allowed me to open my eyes, which allowed me to ask the questions further on that I kept asking my entire time, which were, what am I doing with my life? Why am I doing it? Does it make me happy? Does it fulfill needs? What needs does it fulfill? What do I want to get out of this? Who am I? Who do I want to be? How do I want to become? And I just keep going down these pathways. After the autism diagnosis, that's what really took off even more. So I said, how do I want this to define me? How do I want it to feel? And something I'd say is like the big thing that really helped, and I know we're almost done, but like the big thing that I really looked at was I started to shift the goalposts closer to me, because the goalposts I used to have before were the goalposts that everyone else has, which is make $1 million a year, do this, do that, blah blah, whatever. And I was like, I've done a lot of these things. I haven't hit the million a year yet, and to be fair, I don't really know if I ever want to, because I will probably hit that number even when I don't want to. Whatever's written for you is written for you, is the way I believe it. But like at this time in my life, I'm like, I know what I want, and I know how easy it is to get it. Once I hit that number, the rest of the time is off. Like I said, everything I'm doing for the next 10 weeks of my life are going to be busy as can be. And then after that, it's literally like not fun. I'm still going to be working because I enjoy my work, but it's going to be far less stressful because I know that's going to come to path.
it's
So
interesting. Me and Tiffany had to make a decision on our journey that it wasn't. I think so many people chase money, and
yeah,
like now looking back, well, first of all, I used to chase money. So to sit
of
here and
course we
say
did.
that I didn't do it, like I'd be lying, and I'm not gonna
Dude, if you grew up like any of us kids grew up where you had to basically fight to survive, and like growing up was a struggle. Yeah, you fought for fucking money. You found your
lie.
way. That was a driver for you.
We were told money can solve all problems, and like at least I was. And the thing
Yeah,
was what I found was that money was nothing more than the tool to get me to what I actually wanted. It was the surface level desire that I had,
yeah,
not the core level desire that I had. It wasn't what I actually wanted. It was what was going to help provide me with what I wanted. So I thought it was so interesting that you said that. It's like I have a clear understanding of how much money I need to make. And once I make that amount of money, I get to live the life that I want to live. And I don't have to sit here and struggle and stress. And I honestly find that that stress is usually a trigger that triggers the challenges that most people have. And the stress will trigger the imposter syndrome. It will trigger the anxiety. At least it did for me. And I just thought that was just so profound, man. And that was a great insight to like what I really think a lot of people need on this show. If there was
yeah.
one thing that you would want to leave our listeners with, and this one thing would be, like we talked a lot about, I'll say root. So you talked a lot about ripping out and figuring out the root. And I know you mentioned that maybe you don't know, and I don't think any of us really know if we found it, right? Because we're not God. But,
No.
like based on what you have found when it comes to the roots that you have found, what would you say to somebody who came to a deal or who's listening to this show right now and they're like, okay, like I know that something's up, but I'm too scared to look and actually dig up the root. What would you say to them about going out, like, maybe something, an easy thing or a thing that you learned about what can happen when you go out there and you actually do it? And, like an easy way to possibly go out there and do it that can help them with
Okay.
actually taking that step today.
Okay, so I'm going to give you two answers. One when I answer that, and then I'm going to answer the other question because you asked me a really, really profound question. I want to answer it, which is essentially what's one thing I tell you guys to do right away.
Mhm.
Okay, so finding your route, really simple stuff that I'll give you. So everything I'll give you right now is this is the advice. Number one, it's way scarier than you could imagine, but it's also way less scarier than you can imagine. I know that sounds kind of weird because in your head it sounds like a giant scary monster. You'll go do it, it'll be less scary than the monster, but it'll still be scary, right? It'll still freak yourself out. It's gonna happen. Number two, make sure you do it when you're away. Like the big breakthrough for me came when I was offline, didn't take my laptop with me. I was in Saudi Arabia on my pilgrimage, only a couple of months ago, and that's where the last breakthrough really hit me, like the biggest fashion it ever has, which is incredible. Um, But like other little advice I'd give you as well, like around that route, get comfortable with the idea of being uncomfortable, because the reality is it's kind of like having a splinter through your ankle. You got to pull it out, which is going to hurt, but it'll mean that you'll be able to move your ankle again. But if you leave it in, it's now going to get infected. So the longer you avoid this, the more it's going to become infected and the more painful it's going to become. The more you pull it out, it's going to be fine. Now, how do you do this actually answers your other question, which is essentially what's one thing I'll leave you guys with. Pull out a notepad, or actually do it by hand. Don't do it on your laptop. Do it by hand. Write down exactly what you consider enough. What is enough? Like, how much is enough money? How much is enough of a lifestyle? How much is whatever it is? And by the way, when I say enough, I only start with money because that's the big one everyone's chasing. I need you guys to get really clear on this shit. Like, make a list of all the stuff that you want to have. And by the way, I don't mean like, I want to have a fancy yacht with like 10 people on it. No. I'm talking about for one moment, and by the way, I'm not the person telling you to preach realism. I'm the optimist. I'm the guy that goes shoot for the million stars. I really am. But for now, for your peace of mind, where you are right now, what you're feeling, write down where the realistic numbers are. What is your rent? What is your food? What is your lifestyle expenses? Write all that stuff down. Make that the goal plus 50%. So that and a half is your monthly goal. If you want an income goal, if that's what you're doing as a business. The moment and that's for the income side, but then also do it for your weight, do it for your relationships, do it for your friendships, do it for your food, do it for basically what you're then doing is you're putting out rules for yourself to live by, and your body will be essentially conditioned to make sure that reality becomes true for you. So you end up living at that income, that rule, and whatever it is, and you find contention. Because once you find contention, everything else opens up, because now your stuff is taken care of, which means once that's taken care of, you can play. The moment you learn how to play is when your life really starts to develop and break more cycles. But this is the first cycle to break. The first cycle to break is the hustle and grind cycle, followed up by the business cycle, and then ultimately by the self-sabotage cycle. You do those three, you finish those three things by doing what I just told you, I guarantee you the next lot will actually start becoming a lot simpler for you.
That was absolutely gold. I'm over here taking notes right now. That was wow, dude. That was.
I'm glad we recorded this.
Wow. Yeah, I'm glad we recorded. I'm glad this gets to get out to all the people that we know, because like you put out some gold nuggets today, man. And I just can't thank you enough. I know how busy you are. I know you're across the pond, so it's a completely different time for you. You know, it's early afternoon for me. It's probably late night for you. I don't know.
It's about 7. It's
about
7
okay,
o'clock.
so you know,
so we're not too bad.
Not as bad, but I can't thank you enough for being on the show, man. And you know, thank you so much for your insights. You dove in and you gave us gold. And I think coming from you know, your perspective as someone who has been told that they have autism, they have ADHD, and getting to talk about how that cannot be a hindrance was just it doesn't have to be. Just because someone says it has to be doesn't have to be. And you can really go out there and you can create whatever it is you want to create with no matter what's going on. So Adil, thank you so much for being on the Cycle Breakers show, man. We really enjoyed having you.
I love being here. Hope I can come back.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Cycle Breakers, where this channel is all about helping people clear out the blocks that are holding them back. We have a free gift for you, and that free gift is called our 7-Day Nervous System Reset. The 7-Day Nervous System Reset is where we help you calibrate your nervous system so you can go out there and control your emotions and start to take more control of your life, helping clear the blocks that are holding you back so you can start stepping into that dream life. It's absolutely free, and you can grab it down here in the description. And remember, our friends, let's dare to heal.